When Nintendo makes a new video game console, they pull so much of that identity from past systems. Even when first showing off the Nintendo Switch, they discussed how the Switch has shared DNA with pretty much every other Nintendo console, although some of these were admittedly a bit of a stretch.
We put a handle on Nintendo Gamecube so it could be carried around.
The sentiment still stands though. Being able to play TV quality games off of the TV like on the Wii U gamepad, that's pretty much what the Switch was in a prototype version. The Joy-Cons have the Wii's motion controls. There's the touchscreen from the DS. So many features from past Nintendo consoles joined together to make the Switch the Switch. And now that we're looking forward at the Nintendo Switch 2, I wanted to go back through every single Nintendo console and pick one feature from said console that I need to see on Switch 2. We're turning a leaf to the next generation of Nintendo, but that doesn't mean Nintendo's gonna forget everything that came before. In fact, it's proven that they'll reincorporate stuff that came before to make this console the best it could be. So hey guys, it's Thomas from the Switch Stop, and this is one feature from every Nintendo console I would love to see on the Switch 2. We're gonna be going backwards through the consoles, so let's start off with their most recent console, the Nintendo Switch. This one's kinda goofy because pretty much everything we got on the Switch I would assume is already in Switch 2. So I had to get a little creative here. I'm talking about the marketing. The original Nintendo Switch was so successful because of its marketing. It wasn't just marketed towards kids, it was marketed towards everyone. Stuff like the initial reveal trailer, or even the fact that they had a massive Super Bowl ad. I hope Nintendo pretty much keeps the exact same marketing style from the Switch because it clearly works well and it's also just a lot better than things they've done in the past. Unrelated segue, let's talk about the Wii U now. I actually made an entire video of stuff the Wii U did better than the Switch, so there are a lot of features I'd like to see brought over from this console, but the biggest one is in the controllers. I'm not talking about the gamepad, I'm just talking about the normal Wiimotes. The fact that everyone could use Wiimotes on the Wii U was so nice. It meant that when you go out and buy this new console, you're not gonna have to go out and buy a ton of new controllers. The Wiimotes you already own will just work on the Wii U. I really hope the same thing happens here with Switch 2. Of course the Joy-Con have their problems, but I'm hoping that at least for the backwards compatible Switch games, we are allowed to use our Joy-Con on Switch 2. The Switch sold better than the Wii, so there are a ton of Joy-Con out there that will pretty much just become e-waste if you can't use them on Switch 2. Especially with the console probably launching with a Mario Kart that is local multiplayer to a T. You're gonna want to have enough controllers so that everyone can play. The best way to do that is let us use our normal Joy-Con on the Switch 2, which the Wii U did perfectly, letting us use the Wiimote. Next, let's back up to the 3DS, and this is another one where there's so many features I would like to see here. I would be remiss if I didn't mention themes. The 3DS had an entire theme shop. There's also stuff like Street Pass and Spot Pass that would be so nice to see return, but I'm gonna keep this pretty simple. There's one 3DS feature that's really small and no one really thinks about it, but I do want to see it on Switch 2, and that is this notification LED. Whenever you got a Street Pass or Spot Pass or, any sort of notification, this thing would start blinking a different color, and it was just a nice way to know at a glance that your 3DS got some sort of information. Now, the Switch 1 technically kind of has this. The home button can actually glow blue, and it will in certain cases. Like I know Ring Fit Adventure allows you to set an alarm to remind you to work out, and in that case the Joy-Con will glow blue and start vibrating a bunch to remind you. But in practice, this really isn't used at all. However, with the Switch 2, I'm hoping and kind of assuming that there will be some form of party chat system. So whether there's a little LED or just the part of the Switch 2 that peeks out of the dock can light up, I'm hoping there's some form of visual indicator for when you either get a party invite, a download finishes, or something like that. The status LED on the 3DS did exactly that and would be super nice to see in spirit continued on to the Switch 2. Coming in before the 3DS, we have the classic Nintendo Wii. This was one of the consoles where I truly fell in love with Nintendo, and because of that, there are so many things I'd want to see them bring over. Of course, I could just say the general charm of the UI. The Wii's home menu and all of its apps are just so awesome, and you can't talk about them without mentioning the banger soundtrack that's pretty much in every single app. Making a me, shopping, even checking the weather. All of these apps had banger soundtracks, and I want that on Switch 2, but that is not my biggest feature request. The biggest thing I want to see is some form of pack-in title. The Wii is an incredible console, but it is not nearly the success story we know it as, if not for one game, that being Wii Sports. Not just the fact that Wii Sports exists, but the fact that it was bundled in with every Wii sold in like most countries. The Switch, however, did not have a game bundled in, and you might think, okay, Nintendo's just kind of done with pack-in titles. That's a thing of the past, and I can understand why people would say that. And realistically, it's probably true. However, look at another current gen console, that being the PS5. While it didn't get a full game, Astro's Playroom is a really fun, super polished little tech demo that comes with every PS5. It teaches you all about the PS5's unique gimmicks, and even beyond just Astro's Playroom itself, it introduced a lot of people to Astro, who then obviously went on to win Game of the Year with Astrobot. Pack-ins can be super important to a console's success, and I'm not expecting a game like Mario Kart to be a pack-in. I'm thinking something that is really kind of just a tech demo, along the lines of Astro's Playroom or Wii Sports. Yeah, Wii Sports is pretty much a tech demo. It's amazing, but it is a tech demo. I just hope we get something like that. I don't know if it's like a 1-2 Switch 2 or whatever, but something small bundled in with this new console to show why the Switch 2 is the Switch 2 and not the Switch Pro or Switch 1.5, I think would go a really long way for the system. I mean, again, just look at the Wii. Wii Sports was instrumental in that console's success. Hey guys, just popping in to say, if you aren't already subscribed and are enjoying the content, our goal is to hit 300k subs before the Switch 2 comes out, and it would truly mean a lot if you helped us hit that goal. Also, feel free to comment down below what types of videos you'd like to see. It's all super appreciated, but anyway, let's get back to it. Next, let's move on to the DS. This is a simple one. I want a microphone. Yeah, the DS had a microphone. It wasn't that great, but it did have a microphone, and I want a microphone on the Switch 2. Not only can it be used in like some goofy Mario Party minigames, but it also opens the door for voice chat. I know you can technically do it on the app, but let's just be real, no one is doing that. Getting actual voice chat on the console would be so nice, and that's only possible with a microphone. However, luckily, we've had microphones on consoles dating back to the DS, so it should be possible, right? Before the DS, we had the Nintendo Gamecube, and yup, I want them to add a handle to this thing. Nah, I'm kidding. The Gamecube feature I want to see brought over is analog triggers. Will this happen? No, probably not. It does not look like these triggers are analog. Everything about the console has pretty much already been leaked, and there's not been a single mention of analog triggers, but I really like these on the Gamecube controller. Games like Luigi's Mansion and Super Mario Sunshine used it pretty well, and it was just another way to be immersed in the games you were playing. I would like to see maybe on just the Pro controller, they bring over these analog triggers. Also released in 2001, we have the Game Boy Advance. This was my first Nintendo console ever. I love this thing. One extremely weird quirk of the Game Boy Advance, though, were these movie cartridges. There were cartridges you could buy which were just incredibly compressed versions of movies you could watch on a Game Boy Advance. Are they gonna do this sort of thing again with movie cartridges? No, absolutely not. But the sentiment still stands. Whether you're talking about these weird movie cartridges that are just kind of an odd footnote in Nintendo's history, or the fact that the PS2 was so dang successful because it could play DVDs. Being able to watch the media you want on a console is a huge selling point for a lot of casual consumers. The Switch is really lacking in some media apps. We got like Hulu and YouTube, but no Netflix, Disney Plus. That's all gotta be squared away for Switch 2. I don't actually want the movie cartridges we got on the Game Boy Advance, although it would be kind of funny if they did that again. But the sentiment of being able to watch the content you want to watch on a Nintendo console is what they really need to carry over here. Just adapt it to the modern age. We don't need cartridges anymore, we need streaming services. Next, let's move all the way back to the Nintendo 64. This console took a decent amount of time for me to think of a feature. If you have any other better suggestions, let me know down in the comments below, but a lot of the things this console introduced, like an analog stick on the controller or rumble with the rumble pack, those are just defaults for like every video game console now. So the forgotten feature that I want them to bring over is actually just the designs of the controllers. Say what you want about the N64 controller and how interesting it is, but one thing you cannot knock was the designs at this time. I have never owned a Nintendo 64. I was not even alive when this console was getting games. So this is not some sort of nostalgia or bias. I just think these transparent controllers look so sick. I know it's like a dated Y2K design aesthetic that we probably won't see come back, but if we could get some sort of special edition transparent colored Joy-Cons, I would freak out because that would look so cool. I mean, again, just look at these controllers. I think they look so sick. They also kind of toyed with this whole transparency thing with the Switch Pro controller. It's not the exact same, but at least it shows they're interested in the idea. And yeah, I hope for the Switch 2, whether it's the console itself, the Pro controllers, the Joy-Con, whatever, the feature I want from the N64 is literally just this plastic cover on the controllers that turns it into a transparent, like, colory look. I think it looks so good. Let me know down in the comments below if I'm bugging on this. I just love this design. Moving backwards in time even further, let's talk about the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or SNES. This 16-bit juggernaut was huge at the time, but again, I'm not really sure what to pull over from this. Its major new features were just, I guess, like the X and Y button, which are now, again, standard. However, this does give me a little bit of time to talk about the Satellaview. For those unfamiliar, this is an attachment you could buy for your SNES, or I guess Super Famicom, because it was only in Japan, can, but it would allow you to actually download games and other stuff through satellite broadcasts. Now, from what I understand, it's not like these were full games, but they were cool small little experiences that would just get beamed to your console. Will they do something like this again with like satellite information going to your Switch 2? No. But the concept behind it, I think, is golden. I love when Nintendo gets weird and just experiments on small little titles, and that's the spirit of the Satellaview, and I hope they continue that into Switch 2. Whether it's something as small as like that jump rope challenge, or maybe even something like a Bowser's Fury. You know, a little mini campaign that doesn't warrant like a full release, but is definitely cool enough that we should get to play it. I hope for Switch 2, Nintendo releases a bunch of these like bite-sized mini experiences on the eShop. Obviously, they'd be priced accordingly because they are smaller little games, but I don't know, especially with the rise of indie games, it seems like the general trend in gaming is no longer, okay, I want this game to be as big and long as possible, especially for me. Like, man, I don't want to play super long games. I just don't really have the time for it. I want to play tight, compact experiences that really get creative and try new things. Imagine if these small little experiences were included in like Nintendo Switch Online subscriptions, where maybe every couple of months, Nintendo would just put out some small little game that doesn't take them a ton of time and really just plays with one specific concept or gimmick that they didn't think would warrant a full release, but was still unique enough anyway. Again, I'm not super familiar with the Satellaview, but from what I understand, that's kind of what this did, with users getting to play games that were either remakes of older titles or stuff specifically created just for the Satellaview. I think if Nintendo kind of takes that mentality but then just rolls it into Nintendo Switch Online for Switch 2, that could be super interesting. I'd love to see a bunch of like smaller, really focused, tight Nintendo experiences, and especially as games get bigger and more complex to develop with more intense graphics and all that, I think players are kind of yearning for a bunch of bite-sized small little titles, which I think would be perfect with this sort of Satellaview rolled into Nintendo Switch Online feature. Next, let's talk about Nintendo's first ever handheld, the Game Boy. The one thing I hope the Switch 2 can learn from the Game Boy is the dang battery life, man. I feel like the Game Boy lasted forever. Obviously, it took like actual AA batteries, and obviously did not draw nearly as much power as like a Switch or even anything close to that. But the fact that this console from 1989, which is way smaller than the Switch, gets like 15 hours of battery life, and then the Switch, which is, you know, way more modern, gets like 3. I understand why it is, but I hope they can learn from the Game Boy and include a bigger battery or just longer battery life in the Switch 2. I'm not expecting 15 hours here, but at least like 4 or 5 on more intense games would be super nice. Before we jump to the NES and Nintendo's first ever like major home console, I do want to point out one other console that I definitely glossed over because, well, everyone glossed over it because it was a massive failure. That is the Virtual Boy. I am only bringing this up in this video because I want an outlet to talk about the potential for a Nintendo VR Switch 2 adapter, whatever. They already toyed with this with Nintendo Labo for the base Switch. Considering the Switch 2 will have a bigger screen, which could result in a wider field of view in VR, and I would assume we'll also have a higher resolution on that screen, bumping up from 720 to hopefully like 1080, seeing Nintendo take another stab at this sort of peripheral like they did again with Labo VR would be super interesting. It's such a weird and bizarre thing, but yet you can play all of Breath of the Wild in VR. That doesn't even really sound real, but it is a feature. It's an official thing Nintendo put out. Will they do it again? No, probably not. Should they do it again? I don't even know. Would I personally like to see them continue exploring this path? Yes, I would. Sue me, I don't know. I've always been a pretty big VR fan. I've owned a couple of Oculus headsets in my day. I will not call it the Meta headset. I know that's what it's called. I'm not doing it. You can't force me. But yeah, I don't know. The only thing I would want to see them continue from the Virtual Boy is the VR aspect. And I do think I feel more strongly about this than a lot of other people. Like, I won't be disappointed if they don't do it. That's mainly because I don't think they'll do it. But a couple years into the Switch 2's lifespan, releasing a little VR peripheral headset where you can just slide the Switch in and then play a couple games in VR, I think that would be really fun. All right, now let's talk about the first ever Nintendo console. Yeah, sorry, I'm not talking about any of like these in this video. That being the Nintendo Entertainment System. This is the console that really started it all for Nintendo, and arguably home console video games as a whole. How was Nintendo able to do this? Well, they kind of snuck this console into households around the globe by positioning it as more of a toy. Of course, it is just a full-blown 8-bit video game system, but peripherals like the Light Zapper used in Duck Hunt or Rob, these gave this console a bit more of a toy feel, and that is partially why it was so successful in revitalizing the home console video game industry. I want Nintendo to keep that mindset for the Switch 2, specifically when it comes to its peripherals. Interesting ideas like the Light Zapper, I love that sort of stuff. Even with the Switch, we got the Ring Fit Adventure Ring. I really liked Ring Fit Adventure, and I mean, it was a huge success for Nintendo, selling way more than I assumed it would. So yeah, just like during the NES era, when Nintendo wasn't afraid to create peripherals for games, and just like they did to a massive success with Ring Fit Adventure, I hope the Switch 2 has a couple of games across its lifespan that include weird new peripherals that just introduce fun new ways to control your Switch. Unique input methods for specific games can work really well, and again, it's successful for them. We saw it happen with Ring Fit Adventure. I hope there are a couple games like this for Switch 2 that include weird new peripherals that just impact how we play the game. With that out of the way, we've hit every main Nintendo console and exactly what I want in said console to be brought over for Switch 2, but I need to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments below what features I missed, which ones you want more, and all of that. I wanted to thank you guys all so much too for the support recently. If you missed it, the biggest video we've ever posted, ranking the 100 best Nintendo games, is on screen right now. I'm so proud of how that one came out, so if you're interested, take a look.